Hi, everybody. We are live behind the scenes. And today, everybody's talking about Simone Biles. And so we did too, because we're everyone. And we started talking about what it was like for us as parents and Jessica as a teenager, in terms of just knowing that sometimes pushing is a little bit of a good thing and sometimes it's a terrible thing. And how do we is it only retrospectively that you can say whether that was a good decision or not good decision? I did in my family have some very clear rules that if your quitting impacted other people, then that just wasn't fair, especially if there was a clear end date to something and you just had to weather the rest of the season or whatever it was. Like you owed it to your teammates or the play or whatever else it was to finish up. Now, no one was so incredibly miserable. I don't know what I would have done if someone were like really seeming like they were unwell in that environment. I imagine I would have had a different reaction. But I have one example where one of my kids was really proficient at the piano. And I think when you get good at something, getting better at it is such hard work to make incremental improvement. It's not like you go through that piece and a week later you're done with the piece and the piano teacher says, that was beautiful, let's move to the next. It takes a lot of hard work to get from like not knowing it to knowing it well. And so my kid said to me, you know what, I'm done. I don't want to do it anymore. And number one, I was so pained because listening to him play the piano was like so joyful for me. And I bribed him. I said, I will get you a keyboard so you can play in your room at night, whenever you want to play. Because, obviously there's restricted times for a piano in a house with other people. And he said, okay. And then he said, at graduation from high school, thank you for making me continue with piano. Now, that is somewhat ideal. I can't imagine that all of my stories that my kids would tell end exactly that way. But that one, it felt selfish, number one, because I wanted him to continue. But also, I could tell he got pleasure from playing piano. Like you could feel in him that there was something about sitting down. And to this day, when he comes home, the first thing he does is go to the piano. So that's my good story. And if my kids are listening, they probably have many bad stories. I am going to now pass it on to Kamira.
Kamira lost her cursor there. Good morning. Thank you. So we have rules like that too. You have to finish your season or if you're part of a team. But what I try to keep foremost in my mind is helping our sons learn when is enough for them so that they don't have to ask permission, because at some point they're going to be making these decisions on their own. So when they say they don't want to do things, I have a list of questions I go through and a list of responses to make sure we know why they don't want to do something. For example, if it's because you don't like the coach, but you still like the sport, why would you allow a person to deny you the sport? So let's work on how you can work with a coach you don't like, because that's not going to be your coach for forever. Or if it's really, so we have a competitive musician. If you're just tired of competing, let's not give up music. Let's find a different way to do music so that you're not quitting altogether, because I see, like your son, Sue, I see that you love music. But it's hard to know when to push them and when not to. We, with the competitive musician, I have, I didn't want to be that, the stage mom. So sometimes I'd push them to practice, especially when they're young, you have to push them to practice. And then when they get old enough where they should be self-regulating, at one point I saw that he just wasn't taking it seriously. And I knew that he loved to win competitions. So I didn't push him to practice for a state competition. And it came up and it was like a week or two away and he was practicing and he was no good at his etudes and all the things that he needs to know. And he bursted into tears and looked at me accusingly and said, "You should have made me practice." I was like, I can't win here. But I forced him to practice. I was awful. They started calling me clarinet mom. And then when I didn't, he comes screaming at me, you should have made me practice. So I think my takeaway for all parents is do what feels right in your gut and what's right for each individual kid, because you probably won't win anyway. I'm going to send it down to Eka.
Good morning. Thank you, Kamira. You know what? That really is, the end game is like, we don't win. No matter what we do, it's wrong. But my story is a little bit different. Mine is not when they're doing something and they want to quit. Mine is actually how we pushed when we felt they needed to do something. Like, for instance, I have a daughter who, I don't know, she's timid, shy, introvert, whatever. And so we would go out, like, our favorite lunch, Panera. And then at the end, she'd ask if she could have a cookie. And we would start by saying yes. And then we would go with her to buy it. And then the next time we would go with her and we'd give her the money and she had to order it, and it was painful to have to do that. And then, when we did this long enough, then we said, okay, now here's the money, and now you need to go order it yourself. And for the first couple times, she wouldn't get a cookie. And it broke my heart. But I knew that she had to learn to do this. We weren't going to be there to order her food. We weren't going to be there to help her all the time. So after a couple of weeks, and we would say, hey, you know what, you do what you need to do, but I think we've been here and they know you. You could probably walk up and they already know what you want. So after a couple of weeks of not having that cookie, she actually started doing that. And I think the same thing happened when she went to learn to drive. It was scary. It was intimidating. And we drove to the parking lot and she's like, I don't know which one's this. And we're just like, just keep, so sometimes we needed to feel like we need to push both of them to do things that was out of their comfort zone. Even though it would have been just so much easier for us to do it for them. But I just knew that I didn't want a 25-year-old who didn't know how to pick up the phone and make an appointment for the eye doctor. And I think, they're 10 and 12 when I'm doing this, but I know that this is kind of where it ends up, and there need to be baby steps to get there. So that was how I did it. And I know sometimes you do just want to hug them and say, it's okay, I got it all for you. But I just kind of felt like I couldn't all the time. And that whole, this hurts me more than it hurts you. They were little things, but you still felt sorry for them. So I'm going to send it up to Sharon.
Eka, I so relate to what you're saying, because I feel like in my family, we went through a lot of the same stuff. And those situations were painful, but in some ways they were easier because I had clarity. Like, not like, should I let this kid quit a sport, or, they're really good at something and they want to stop. I think that's really hard and I don't know what to do. But I was kind of grateful sometimes when I had clarity, if I could prioritize, like, think about, like, do they need to do this? Is this a life skill? Is this something they have to learn to do? Like when they were little, swimming was one of the things I decided they must learn to swim. I don't care if they're going to be on a team or what, but it's a survival skill. It's more than a life skill. They have to do it. And it was painful. Like, they were so tentative, some more than others among my 3 kids, but we just kept at it and tried to, like you said, Eka, we tried to ease them through it, but we never felt like we would stop because it was so clear. I kind of felt similarly about the bike. Obviously, it wasn't, a survival skill, but I thought, like, this is something, I want you to learn right now. And I felt pretty certain about that. And now that I have teenagers and I have one learning to drive, I feel the same way about driving, like you were saying. And I think it's good that when they're tentative, because it is a dangerous thing. And they, it's a healthy bit of nervousness is natural. But I find myself, and my son even noticed it. He said, this is like when you taught me to ride a bike and you said, we're going to do it for, every single day. The bike was 5 minutes. We're going to do it for 5 minutes every day until you get it. And lately, he's not unwilling, but I said, we're going to drive every day. It might just be a few blocks, and because he hasn't been able to have his behind the wheel lessons yet. But, we're just going to keep at it. We're going to go out there and do it. And I think that's great. But on the other hand, I don't know as much what to do about, the one who likes ice skating but doesn't want to compete. And we've said you don't have to compete, but, doesn't like the pressure of learning the skills that they think they're never going to use. Or the kid who is just about to get better at baseball, is really picking it up and says, I don't want to do it anymore. Or the kid who wants to quit piano. And everybody goes through that. And I think you said it, Sue. You don't, maybe more of one of us said this. You don't really know until years later, did you do the right thing? Because the kid will report back to you, oh, thank you for doing that. Or, like one of my kids, this reminds me of you, Eka, said, thank you for making me order in the restaurant when I was younger, because it was just going to get harder if I didn't do it. And, I don't know. I think we just do the best we can, and like all of parenting, and then we see what happens. Oh, Catherine Rose has a comment here. It's going to cover up some of us. Mine is that he enjoys doing multiple things in each sport he plays has become year-round and earlier mornings and a lot longer practices. There aren't really seasons anymore. If the coach doesn't see the players doing it through the summer and year-round, they scrutinize the kid like, where have you been? And, fishing isn't a sport. When are you going to pick up basketball again? Yeah, that's so hard because there is a lot of pressure externally, too, on, if you can't just do it as a hobby, you have to do it to a certain level, or it feels like, are you all in or are you going to quit? Those sometimes feel like the choices, and that's so hard. Go ahead. I'm talking too much.
No, I just was, when you're saying that, I remembered, I think I've told you guys a story that I was reading this. I mean, I'm hoping I'm attributed to the right person. I was reading an interview with Dorothy Hamill about I was watching a video with her about ice skating, how she got so good. And she said what happened was her mother would sign her up for a session. And then halfway through, she'd be like, I hate this. I want to quit. And her mother would say, like, we paid for the skates. We paid for this. You will finish the session and then you can quit. And by the end of the session, she loved it again. So she signed up for the next session. Halfway through, she'd hate it again. Her mother would say, you need to finish the session because, we paid. And so I think that's what we kind of did, is like, if you don't like what you're doing, we put the money up front. We bought the equipment. We bought whatever. You've got to finish that. And then at the end, if you don't like it, then we're done. But in the middle of it, like you were saying, Sue, finish it off. And it's the same thing. I mean, even though when this happened, I was secretly harboring this thinking like, oh, they're going to love it again. And I'll send them up for the next session. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. I mean, I think our daughter did like one thing of karate, and I really wanted her to keep doing it, for self-defense reasons, but she didn't like it. So, and Lisa Becker, I truly regret letting my son quit karate after making so much progress. Yeah.
I'm curious, Lisa, what your son says. I don't know how old he is, but does he regret it?
Right.
Tell us in the comments.
Yeah. So that was my 2 cents about, and I think it was Dorothy Hamill. If it wasn't Dorothy, I'm sorry. I attribute it to you.
Can I ask you a question, Eka? I know you had a ballerina daughter. So yeah. She was very advanced in her dance. Did she ever have those, maybe you don't want to answer for her, but did she ever have a time when she thought she might not want to keep going?
There was a point where it's crazy. I don't know about you guys, but it's just anecdotal. It seems like junior year of high school is like this huge thing where I don't know what happens junior year, but all of a sudden junior year, like they want to quit what they've been doing, or they want to add something. So there was this time where she didn't want to do it. And I was like, okay, hon, whatever. But inside I was like, oh, come on, girl. Yeah. And we just said, we were very like the same thing. We're like, if you don't want to do this, we understand. Once again, let's finish out. We've paid for X amount, whatever. And then she came to it again. And, and all you guys know, but I don't know if my audience knows, that she ended up actually dancing professionally for 3 years. So, but there was that time, and we encouraged it. And I think sometimes when they know that you got them, that you're going to be supportive of them stopping, I think it makes it okay to know that they can do either way. And you're not going to be like, oh no, not that, So I said that like in the bathroom with the fan on, but not out loud to her. there were a lot of conversations in the bathroom with the fan on, because it was sometimes the only place that was private for these conversations.
Jessica, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I'm the only one that hasn't gone. Well, first, before I tell any of my things, I'm going to be playing the role of Mindy. So let me just change my name. I'm going to read the thing Mindy sent. So, she said that, certainly there's no question about an abusive or toxic situation. So that's absolutely the time to quit. That being said, I think this is a tough call because I do not want my kids to quit every time something gets difficult. They can mature, build self-confidence, and learn so much from facing and overcoming adversity. How do we raise resilient kids if we don't help and guide them to persevere through difficult situations? We've all heard of fear of failure. I don't want my kids to give up because they're afraid of failing. I think we have to look at each situation individually, and while as parents we hate to see our kids struggle, or we do have to help guide them and, yes, push them a bit through that struggle. So that was to say. I'm gonna, if I don't do it now, I'm gonna forget. Oh, did my camera die? Oh, no, I'm done.
No, you're on camera, but you glitched out. So let's give one more example for you, and then we'll see if anyone else.
I just have a range of different situations. Like I took piano from ages 6 to 12, and I think my problem is that I'm the kind of person that if I don't get something immediately, I want to be done with it. I get frustrated very quickly when it's something I don't get. So I am glad that my parents made me stick with piano for that long, but I am glad that I was able to quit when I did, because I don't like, I love piano. I wish I could play the piano better, but I don't know if sticking with the lessons longer I would have enjoyed it. And on the flip side, like when I took fencing, every week it would be like, I don't want to go. I'm so tired. Can I just stop? And my mom would convince me to go. And every time I'd have fun, even on days I wasn't feeling well. So I think, actually, one more, when I was a kid, my mom was making me go to dance, and one day I pulled her aside, and I'm like 5 at this point, and I'm like, Mom, do I have to go to dance? All we do is dance. And I think the comparison between that and with, piano and fencing, like, that was a time where it was like, oh, you don't like doing this at all. So I think my parents were able to thread the needle all right, even though I'm not sure if I don't know if I would have wanted to continue piano or not. I don't know. The jury's still out on that one.
Well, what I think is that these are really tough calls, and Kamira and I'll pass it to you, Kamira, but I'll just say Kamira had a strategy, which was a healthy strategy. It wasn't like, I'm going to trick you, but it was like, I'm not going to invest in your outcome. You're going to figure it out yourself. That was great. I had a kid, and we both had kids who looked like they really got something out of what they were doing. So it wasn't like we were making them do something that they hated. It's just that it gets hard. At certain points, it gets hard. Kamira, what do you want to say?
So I just want to pick up on what Mindy said and go for the other side, that sometimes you do want to see them pushed through. We have in our family what we call the MJ moment. It's the Michael Jordan finals playing through with the flu moment. That sometimes you just got to push through and you will be great. And when it's over, you can collapse. And so we've had those times when with the musician, he wasn't contagious, but he was really sick, but he was also the top in that particular group, and he had solos and there was a performance and he was going to show up, and we, literally scooped him up afterwards and sent him to bed. And we applaud those moments in our house, like, yay, you pushed through, you did it. But we don't, we're not about, you have broken toes and you're limping, but you still have to do the vault. But we do applaud pushing through, having your MJ moment.
Yeah, I mean, you can see how many different ways there are to approach this. Mm-hmm. And every kid is different and every parent has different expectations. But I think Sharon said, trying to step back and say, why do I want him to continue? Because there are a lot of experiences where it created my social life. And when my kid didn't want to do it anymore, the loss was mine also. And I kind of wanted to say, but you didn't ask me. Like it impacts me. Anyway, this is a story Eka wants to jump in. Okay, go
I
for
was
it.
going to say that one of the questions what we had for our daughters when they were done was like, you need to think about, if you can, a year, 2 years, 3 years, are you going to look back on this and regret you stopped? Are you going to think back and say, I should have stuck through it? Because if it's just a hard time, we'll help you through it, and we'll, maybe take a month off or whatever. But we don't want any regrets from you guys. We're giving you an awesome, we're giving you so many opportunities. Please take them all, because I don't want you to regret that you didn't do it. So that was one of the questions we always asked. You're going to regret that you didn't see through it. So yeah, let's not throw that.
Okay, so you heard from us many ways to approach this. We hope some of it resonated with you. If you have anything else that you want to share, you can put it in the comments. And thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.